Hey everyone, I'm Matt from the Ionic team, and today I wanted to talk with you about continuous deployment and live app updates using our Ionic Deploy service. I'm Matt. I am the product manager on the Ionic Pro team, and today I'm going to be walking you through not only the setup of our Cordova plugin for deploy, but also a full setup using our new Deploy API. Now, Ionic Deploy gives you the capability to push hot code updates right to your app's users, bypassing the app stores. This allows you to fix bugs on the fly or launch new features without any sort of delay. It all happens on your time. Now, before we dive in, I wanted to talk a little bit about the traditional software development lifecycle that you use for any software development, not just mobile. First off, you're developing a new feature or you're fixing a bug that you want to get out into the public. Then you're testing it with customers. Maybe you're using something like Ionic View. Then you're deploying that into production. You're getting it live. You're getting it into your users' hands. And after that, you're monitoring for errors. Now, this, looks like a rather simple software development lifecycle. The problem comes when you're trying to use this in a quick manner and you're developing for mobile, right? Not only does generating native binaries kind of a time-consuming process, you've got to launch it on Android, you have to launch it on iOS, you have to make sure all your certs are up to date. But on top of that, especially on iOS, you need approval from the app stores, and that takes time, right? It could be a matter of days for your app or just an app update to get approval from the app store. That means that these bugs can actually sit in production for extended periods of time. Your new features can go a longer duration of time without getting into users' hands, and really that's just not the most ideal scenario. Now, Ionic apps actually have multiple layers here. They're kind of like onions, right? On the red layer here, you can see that Cordova plugins, native dependencies or native settings, like whether or not somebody can use your app in landscape mode, and all native level permissions, like whether or not your app is talking to the camera, all of that is updated through the normal App Store process, right? You have to go through Apple's approvals in order to change any native layer of code. However, 99% of your code exists in kind of this non-native layer. That includes Angular, Ionic, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, icons, any assets. Basically 99% of your app, you're allowed to update on the fly per Apple and Android's terms of service. Ionic Deploy is a service that allows you to update that entire top layer on the fly, even send different versions of your app to different users. So today I wanted to walk you through a demo on how to use Ionic Deploy. We're going to set up a new project with Deploy, then we're going to send some live updates directly to your users instantly with the Cordova plugin, no code required. And then after that, with some custom code, we're actually going to allow our users to opt into a special beta channel that gives them access to only things they might find that you want to get out to early access users. So we're going to go through some simple setup steps, and I'm going to walk through all of this live so you guys get to see it, but let's just go over it really quickly. First, we're going to install the Ionic Cordova plugin. That's what actually allows you to perform these updates. We're going to hook that up to a production channel. Then we're going to put the app on our phones through Xcode. And then after that, we're going to push up some new code to Pro and reload our phone using Deploy using that new code that we wrote. Then we're going to set up the Pro Client SDK. That's what gives us access to the Deploy API. And we're going to program a custom beta toggle with our update logic that can check for an update right when the user clicks the toggle. Then we're going to show off some updates and allow people to switch between production and beta and show you guys kind of how that works. So without further ado, let's dive into the demo. So I actually already have an entire app set up locally. I've already gone through Ionic Start. I didn't want to make you guys sit through that, but I haven't really done any other setup. I haven't even added this app to Pro. So the first thing I want to do is add this app to Pro here. We're going to call it Deploy Video. We're going to create a new app. We're just at dashboard.ionicjs.com, just our standard Ionic Pro dashboard here. So we're going to create that new app, and then we're going to follow along with the simple setup instructions. Now, I'm already on the latest version of the Ionic CLI, so I'm not going to run that. And I have already created an app locally, so I'm going to choose to connect an existing app using Ionic Link. So let's copy that real quick. Go to our command line terminal. You can see I'm in this Deploy Video app that I've been working on, and we're going to run Ionic Link. This is going to set up the Git remotes so that I can push code up to Pro. I'm not going to go in deep on kind of everything that's happening here. If you want to check that out, I've got other videos over on the Pro documentation that show you this getting started process. All right, so we are all linked and ready to go. As you can see, we've added the remote Ionic. Now, there's already going to be some code here, so let's push that up to Pro. Let's do git status. We can see a couple files were changed when I ran that Ionic link, so let's add those. Let's commit initial commit here and do git push Ionic master. That's going to send the code up to Ionic Pro, and it's going to allow us to see our code-based channels as well. So let's refresh the dashboard. Now, for any build that you send up to Pro, you could click on the little commit hash here, and you could see that build in progress. So it's already picked up our build. It's already working on running it. It's going to do a full build of our code in the cloud. You can also see all of our channels are listed here. We've got master and we've got production. Master is automatically going to update anytime you do git push Ionic master. That is configurable. If you click on one of these channels and go to settings, you can change that. Today, we're going to be hooking up some code to production as well as a new beta channel. So let's go ahead right now, just while we're here, and create a beta channel that we're going to use later. And then let's start to actually set up the Ionic Deploy native plugin so that we can start pulling in these updates, right? This we set up on a channel. So today we're going to choose production, going to choose setup deploy here, and it's going to give us a few different options that we can choose from here on how deploy is going to act. These options are deploy updates in the background. So as your user is playing with your app, it's going to be downloading those updates. And the next time they load your app, we'll apply that update for you automatically. Second option is to download updates in the splash screen and install them immediately. That kind of prevents your user from going forth unless they have the latest version of your app. And then the third version is don't do either of those things, but perform everything in the JavaScript layer. It's customizable by you guys. I don't necessarily advise that you pick that. You should pick one of these top two. You can still program JavaScript layer API updates and, do fancy stuff like check for updates on login and apply them on logout, even if you're using one of the two native layer updates here. These just protect you. So if you push like a white screen of death to your users, but you've chosen one of these, you can still update that on the fly, even if your custom JavaScript isn't loading. Today, I'm going to choose to download updates in the splash screen and install them immediately, and it's going to give me the piece of code I need to run to install that Cordova plugin. If you guys want a little bit more detail here on what's going on, what this Cordova plugin is doing, you can go over to ionicframework.com/docs/pro, click on deploy, click on installation, and it will show you kind of a little bit more in depth what these different options are on this plugin, the different methods of applying updates. We've got full paragraphs here on kind of how each of these update modes works, and then a little bit of usage, and we'll go through some of that today as well. So I'm going to copy this Cordova plugin code here over to my command line, but I'm going to want to add two different flags. I just want to show you that these flags exist here. So if we go back to our documentation, one of the flags is max store. That's available. By default, max store is set to 2. That's just how many versions of code we're going to keep on the device that you've sent to your users as like a history, right? So if you needed to roll back, those would be immediately available on the user's device as opposed to re-downloading them. I'm going to go ahead and set the max store to 0 just for the purposes of this demo. So it's going to re-download code every time that it is needed here. The other kind of optional flag is something related to debug mode. So if you don't do this, it's going to ask you to apply updates if you've got a binary running in debug mode. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off just so we can stay in debug mode today, but I can still show you kind of how deploy works. So I am also going to add variable warn_debug equals false, and we're going to hit enter and let that Cordova plugin install. Yet again, this Cordova plugin is what actually allows the updates to be performed on the device. It's what's checking in with our servers to get new versions of code and apply them locally. So we're just going to sit and wait for this to install, and we'll be right back. Awesome. So it looks like our plugin installed fairly quickly. Now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do a full build of this code, and we're going to get the app onto my phone so that we can start working with the actual update system. So let's do Ionic Cordova build iOS. That's going to give us a full Xcode project. This might take a second while you're working on this, but this will give us a full Xcode project that we're going to then sign and put on my device so that we can start playing with this today. Awesome. Now that we've got that archive, I know we said it failed. That's just because I haven't set up the code signing for this project yet. So what we're going to do is open up Xcode here. And I am going to open another project, and I'll show you guys where this is located here. If you go back and just find your actual app here. So I'm in the webinar folder for the deploy video here. You can see we've got a platforms directory, iOS, and in here there's a workspace file. We're going to want to open that workspace file in Xcode. And this is what's going to allow us to sign the app and put it on my phone so that we can play with it today. So we're going to click over here on our main project here. That's going to bring up the project editor. It's angry that it requires a development team. I'm going to choose my work development team and just let it automatically sign that for me. And as you can see here, we've got our deploy video project, and I want to put it on my phone. So let's go ahead and click play here. And this is going to go ahead and put the app on my phone so we can watch my phone. It's connected to my computer right now as it's putting this on here. And we're going to see that app come up on my phone with that Cordova plugin installed that we did just a moment ago. All right, so we went ahead and that app has indeed installed on our phones here, and it's going to be running the version of the code that was just right off my system, right? We haven't actually deployed any updates yet to this version of code, so as you can see, it's just the default tabs app. So let's go ahead and let's actually make a modification. This could be, a new feature, it could be a fix of a bug. Today, I'm just going to change the text that's kind of showing up here, and we're going to deploy that to production and see the update happen live on the device. So let's switch over to our code here, and we are going to see, right now I've just got a few files already open, our app.module.ts we're going to be working with later, our home.html, and home.typescript. So let's go ahead and kind of remove these paragraphs and just say, new production code. And we are going to save that change. And we are going to push it up to Ionic Pro. So I'm going to do git status. We're going to add all of those changes, commit them, new production text, git push Ionic master. And that is going to go up to Ionic Pro and it's going to build. So let's go back to our dashboard here. Go over to builds. You can see there's our new production test. And we're going to wait for this build to finish. And then we'll put it on our phones. All right, so this build has indeed finished. We're going to go back to the builds tab, and now you can see we've got that nice deploy and package as well. So let's click deploy on our new production test. We're going to choose that production channel, hit deploy, and then you'll see this little tag shows up. That's how you know this version of code is active on production now. So if I go back to my phone here, we are going to kill this app really quick, because I chose the splash screen update method. And then when I open this app, it's going to check for an update from us in the splash screen, and it's going to apply that update immediately. So let's try that. Awesome. So it went to our servers, downloaded the new version of code, and showed us that new production code. So if you don't need to customize kind of how the updates happen or anything like that, at this point, you've got fully working Ionic Deploy inside your app pulling from this production channel. Now, we're going to take time now to actually customize how this works using the Deploy API and pull from an optional beta channel. So we are going to actually code this. And to do that, we are going to start by setting up the Pro Client SDK. So if you go over here kind of in our documentation to the Deploy API section, you'll see we've got two prerequisites, right? We've already installed the Ionic Cordova plugin. We just need to also set up the Pro Client that gives us access to the API. And you want to make sure that's at least on 1.0.19 if you've already got it installed. But I'm going to show you the full install process today. So let's click Pro Client Setup Guide here, and let's walk through this really quick. So the first thing it wants us to do is install the latest version of Ionic App Scripts and the Ionic Pro Client SDK. So I'm going to copy that. We're going to go back over here to my command line, and we're going to install these two dependencies. So let's go ahead and wait for this to finish really quick. All right, so App Scripts and the Ionic Pro Client SDK are now both installed in my project, but we're not done yet. We need to do a little bit of setup, and this differs depending on whether or not you're Ionic 2 or 3 or Ionic 1. I'm using Ionic 3 today, so we're going to make some modifications to our app.module.ts file. Okay, so here is kind of the new code that we want to import. I'm going to copy this top section, and we'll manually modify this ng module section in just a minute here. So I'm going to copy this. We're going to go to our code, go to appmodule.ts, and between our imports and our ng model is where I'm going to put this code. Now you'll notice there are a few kind of syntax errors, and that's because I've already imported both error handler and Ionic error handler. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove those imports, and we're going to leave the injectable and injector here for Angular core. That's the most common way to set this up. Next thing you're going to want to do is replace the information in pro.enit. That needs your app ID and your app version. Your app ID is really easy to find. If we go back to our Ionic dashboard, you can see here I'm in Acme Code deploy video. This is the ID right next to that. So we're going to put our ID in pro.enit. And then the app version is something you're going to want to keep up to date with kind of any native versioning that you're using, like in config.xml. So if I pull up config.xml, you can see right now I'm on 0.0.1. This is what allows Ionic monitoring to keep your kind of source maps in sync. I'm not going to go through a full monitoring demonstration today, but you're going to want to keep that up to date if you're using the monitoring service. So there we go. We've got that set up. We've got our injectable. Now we need to go back and make that final modification from the documentation here, where we provide the Ionic error handler and our my custom error handler here into ng modules. So let's copy that real quick. Let's replace this bottom line here with that code. Let's click save, and we should be good to go. So this is how you set up the Pro client. Now it's accessible in all other areas of your project. So today, I want to add a new feature to my app, right? I want to add the ability to toggle between the production and the beta channels and allow my user to kind of pick that. I'm going to use the home page here as kind of a settings page. So let's go ahead and change this here to settings. And then we're going to add a little bit of code here to give ourselves a form that allows users to do that. So let's add a paragraph first that says, I'm connected to the, and then we're going to use a variable deploy channel. So that'll pull in whatever channel the user is currently connected to, just to show that in the UI. And then we're going to also want some download progress for any of our updates. So let's do download progress, and this is out of 100, just so we can show that on the screen as well. And then we're going to want that toggle that allows people to switch. So let's use an Ion item for that. In there, we're going to want an Ion label. We're going to call this opt-in to beta features. And then under this, we are going to want an Ion toggle. We're going to give that a model so that we can check the setting in our code here. So we're going to just call that is beta. And then we're also going to want to, on the Ion change event here, call the toggle beta function so that we can actually change the channel we're checking into in our code, right? So overall, this is all the work I'm going to do in the template. Now we're going to move over to the home.typescript file and start to actually program the ability for this thing to work. First thing I'm going to want to do is at the top of my file, we're going to do an import pro from at Ionic/pro. It's going to give us access to that full Pro client. Then we're going to want to set up those variables that we're going to use. So deploy channel is equal to nothing right now. We're going to do is beta is equal to false. And we're going to do download progress is equal to 0. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to write a function that checks the channel in the deploy plugin and gets more information about it. So I'm going to call that async. So async just means that we are going to wait for things that are normally promises to come back before going to the rest of our code. I'll show you that in 2 seconds here. So let's do check channel. And we are going to do constant result equals await pro.deploy. And this is the deploy API in the Pro clients. If I click dot, you can see all of the different functions that are available here. I just want to get the info. So that info is going to return the current settings of the deploy plugin. Cool. So now I've got this response object, right? Because we async await. By here, result is already equal to the result of this promise that came back. So let's do this dot deploy channel is equal to res dot. And you can see we've got binary version channel in deploy UID. I just want the channel. And we're going to set this dot is beta equal to this dot deploy channel, whether or not it's equal to beta. That'll give us a Boolean value, right? Now, because I've used async await, there could be errors that happen in there, right? Maybe we had an error kind of getting the data, or we're not running in Cordova. So I'm going to wrap this thing in a try catch. And then if we get an error, for right now, I'm just going to send it up to the monitoring service. So we're going to send up that exception right to our Pro dashboard if anything happens there. Now, when this code runs, or when this page runs, rather, in the constructor here, we're going to want to call this .checkChannel. And that's going to set us up with the initial data we need, the initial setting for whether or not, is beta, whether or not the toggle should be on, and whether or not we have that deploy channel. So that's our check channel function. We're also going to need that toggle beta function. So let's write that async as well. Do toggle beta here. And here we need to pass the deploy plugin some config. So let's do const config equals an object there. We're going to pass it what channel we want to connect to. So whether or not is beta is on, we're either going to change this to beta, or it's going to say production. Okay, and then we're going to do another try catch block here. Pro.monitoring.exception, and we're just going to pass through that error. And here's where we're going to do a couple things, right? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to await pro.deploy.init, and we're going to pass it that config. So that's going to update the settings for the deploy plugin to either be pulling from the beta channel or the production channel, right? Then we are going to check the channel just to make sure that happened appropriately. And after that, we're going to want to actually perform a full update here. So let's write a separate function for that. Let's do async perform automatic update. And this one also we're going to put in a try catch block here. Okay, and then in here, we're going to want to do a full update. Now, if you've used the Pro Deploy API before, you have to go through all these steps, right? You have to do a check to see if there's an update. You have to download it. You have to extract it. And then you have to redirect to that update. In the new version of our API, we've written one function. If you don't need to customize that, you can just call one function. So let's do const response equals await pro.deploy .check and apply is going to do the full thing for us. So the first thing it's going to want is that redirect Boolean, true or false, whether or not you want to redirect to the update after it's been downloaded. And we do. Then it's going to take a progress function here to show us the actual download progress. So here's where we're going to set that download progress variable equal to the progress that we get back. And then down here, if rest.update, then, we got an update and we're redirecting. Otherwise, no update was found. Here you could update the UI. I'm not going to right now. I'm just going to leave it as it is. We're going to click save. And this is kind of all of our update logic, right? So you could customize this. You could change check and apply to do the kind of full version for you. So if we go back to our docs here, back to the deploy API, you'll actually see I put two versions of code in the docs here. One is perform automatic update. That's the one that we just programmed. And then the other is perform manual update. Here you can see I call each individual function back to back. So we do check, we do download, we do extract, we do redirect. This is what you'd kind of blow out that code to if you needed to customize what happens. So you might do check, download, and extract whenever a user logs in, and then log out. You might do a redirect. You might check for an update every 30 minutes if this app never closes. This kind of allows you to customize that flow if you want to split it out into those functions, but we're not going to do that today. So right now we should be good to go. This should be all the code we need to have our toggleable beta channel. We imported Pro, we set it up, and then we made our template. We made all the functions that we need here. So what I am going to do, first of all, is I'm just going to run Ionic serve, make sure I didn't have any kind of crazy errors happen or any syntax errors with this code. And then we're going to push it up to Pro, and we're going to watch this live on the device. We're going to be able to toggle through these channels. So let's make sure that we didn't have any errors writing this code. All right, so it looks like we've got our settings page. We've got that toggle. No syntax errors or anything like that, so we should be good to go. Let's bring up our terminal here. We're going to close out of that serve. Get status. We're going to do get add dot, get commit. This is going to be the production toggle code. Git push Ionic master. And now what we're going to want to do is I want to toggle between two versions of code, right? I need something to put on the beta channel. So let's go back to our code really quick here. And we're going to just do something simple. We're going to add an H2 that says, these beta features are awesome. Okay, and we're going to save that. And we're going to go back, add those changes. This is going to be the beta toggle code, git push Ionic master. And we're going to wait for both of those things to build. We're going to set them on their respective channels, and then we're going to watch this work live on the device. So let's go ahead here and refresh our builds list. You can see the production toggle code and beta toggle code both got sent up a few seconds ago. This one's almost done building already, so we're just going to let that finish. All right, so this build finished successfully, so that's production. So we're going to deploy this code to production. In turn, that's actually going to send it to our device, because remember, our device right now is checking into the production channel whenever you open the app in that splash screen. But we're also going to wait for this beta toggle code to finish real quick, and I'm going to set this to the beta channel. And we're going to watch it flip-flop back and forth to having that H2 tag we put in there and not having it as we show it to you on the phone. All right, so this build is finished. Let's go back and deploy it to our beta channel. So now we've got our production toggle code running on production, our beta toggle code running on the beta channel, and now we're going to want to bring up our phones here and test this. So right now, remember, we're on that new production code text way back from C3CB80 over here. So I am going to close the app on my phone, open it. It's going to download that new version of code in the background that has our toggle form sitting on production, right? So here we can see I'm connected to the production channel. Our download progress is 0 out of 100. Opt into beta features right now is turned off. So when we turn that on, it's going to set the channel, check the channel and make sure we are good. And then it's actually not going to apply the update because we forgot one important piece. So let's go back to our code quick. Here, we just have it checking the channel. So you know what? Let's show this off. Let's show this off real quick. If I click on the toggle, now it says I'm connected to the beta channel. If I click off the toggle, it says I'm connected to the production channel. Awesome. What we actually did is we forgot to await here this .perform automatic update. So we are going to save that. Then we are going to comment out this line of code. We're going to do git add dot, git commit -m. This is our production toggle code 2, git push Ionic master. Now we are going to uncomment that. We're going to do git add dot, git commit -m. This is beta toggle code v2, git push Ionic master. And now we're going to wait for these to update, and we'll show you guys kind of how it's going to work now that we have that perform automatic function update in there. So let's go back to our dashboard. Let's refresh. We got to wait for these to build again. We're going to set them as active, and we're going to play with it on the phone. And actually, you know what? While this is building, let me show you something cool. So even though we didn't have that perform automatic update function set in there, this is sweet. So let's toggle onto the beta channel, right? Let's close our app. And now our app is actually connected to that beta channel. So if I open it, it's going to show me that beta text because it's going to update it right now on the splash screen and say these beta features are awesome. So it didn't follow along with our automatic update function, but it did still work performing that update in the native layer in that splash screen. So now let's close it. Let's go back here, deploy this to production. This has that automatic code in it. And let's wait for this one to finish. That one finished. Let's deploy that to our beta channel. Let's go back to our phone. And now this will perform the update checks right when I click toggles. So right now it's going to download the new version. These beta features are awesome. It's got the new version, the V2, with the automatic update function. So if I toggle this back to production, it's going to go download production in the background, refresh to not have that H2, right? Now if I toggle it back on, it's going to go perform the check, do the download, give us that this beta features are awesome. So now every time your user clicks toggle, we're performing that automatic update. It's not just happening in the splash screen layer. It could still happen in the splash screen layer if you deploy, right now we're connected to production. If my user's app was closed, I deployed something new to production, they'd get it in that native layer. They don't need to click the toggle. We just check when they toggle whether or not we have an update that needs to be performed. So that'll allow you to allow your users to connect to that opt-in beta features branch. Cool. So let's do a quick recap here. Let me pull up my slides. We're going to talk a little bit more, just some follow-up about how this whole thing works. So yet again, step one, we added that Cordova plugin. We put the app on our phone. We pushed some new production code to Pro and reloaded it right on the phone. Then we installed the Pro Client SDK. We programmed our custom beta toggle. We forgot to put in the update logic, but we still used that native update layer. We went back and we added that update logic, and then anytime we click toggle, it automatically downloaded the code from the respective beta or production channel that the user was checked into, and then we showed off that whole system working. So kind of the life cycle that we programmed here, I wanted to create it in a picture so you guys could see what's going on here. So, you're in the bottom left, you're the user, you get push up to us, you've got a built version of code. We had 2 built versions of code that we assigned to the production channel and the beta channel. And then you've got 2 users on the right-hand side here. One does not have the beta toggle that we made. They have it turned off, and the other user has it turned on. So the top user is checking in for updates from our server on the production channel and downloads any updates off of that channel. And then the beta user at the bottom is checking into updates on the beta channel and downloading those whether or not when they need those updates. So overall, that's Ionic Deploy. It is just one piece of Ionic Pro. Ionic Pro is that complete suite of tools and services around our always free framework that allows you to use Creator for prototyping, Ionic View for app testing with your users, Deploy we went over today for those updates. You can package your native binaries in the cloud. You can use our monitoring service for real-time error reporting. And later in the spring, we're also going to launch with progressive web app hosting. So I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Ionic Deploy today. I'll catch you guys next time.